Hello, horror fans. Pete here from the Lasser Cast, and I am with my very good friend and co-host, Dr. Zayas God, Danny Torkel. Danny has a Herculean task tonight. He is going to get through episode 5 of 101 scariest horror movie moments on Shudder, and he's not going to talk about what he's just done this whole day. Is that possible?
It is. I'll just flash the badge. There it is.
Let's just say that Danny was pretty dang close to the inspiration for our channel, The Lastercast, Mr. Mike Flanagan. And boy, does he have some good content coming your way. I guess we're going to say today. We're recording this on October 6th, but our video is going to go up on October 7th.
Yeah, so Danny, by the time we're done recording this, you guys should have on our channel a 30-minute video of the Midnight Club panel and Q&A with Mike Flanagan, the entire cast, hosted by Perry Nemiroff of Collider. It was so much fun. I had a great time, but let's get to this list so that we can go to bed.
Yes. And you know what? There are some super exciting things to talk about on this list tonight. Something that we've been talking about for the past few weeks finally happened this time around. We're going to get to that with entry number 46. But out of all these films, there's only 2 that I haven't seen. The very first one I did not see is number 49, A Bay of Blood, another entry by Mario Bava. Have you seen this one, Danny?
I have, and I'm so glad that Edgar Wright called it by its much better name, Twitch of the Death Nerve. One of the coolest titles. That's one of the great things about Italian horror and giallo horror is you get these incredible titles. Like Lucio Fulci has a movie called Don't Torture a Duckling. You have all these crazy there's movie titles that have like 8 to 10 words in them. There's one that's like your mind is an unlocked box and I'm the key, or your vice is I don't know. But yeah, Twitch of the Death Nerve is such a better title than Bay of Blood. I have seen this movie. They posted one of those like guess the movie,
right?
And I was wrong on this one. I thought that quote about people writhing together in sex and death was going to be Possession, starring Sam Neill. But they went with the scene that inspired, and by inspired I mean was completely stolen by Friday the 13th Part 2, and that is a scene where, as Ryan Turek points out, a couple is having really bad sex, and the killer sneaks in and with a spear goes right through the two of them, through the bed, and they squirm and die. They get a little twitch of the death nerve, and this is one of those movies where, like, just in the scenes that you watch, you can tell how influential it was to the Friday the 13th movies, with like the cleaver to the face and that like hooking blade that slices the woman's throat, and there's these gory decapitations. This is like a Mario Bava movie that feels like a Lucio Fulci movie.
Yeah.
And I think there was like one. I think I'm right about this, but I feel like Christopher Lee. There was a story once about Christopher Lee getting so disgusted by watching this movie that he walked out.
Oh, wow, and that's saying something.
Yeah, this is not like I would never call this a great movie.
Yeah,
but it's a great representation of Italian horror, and it's gory as fuck.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, I'm a little timid about checking out these Italian horror movies. I know they're so extreme, and there's another entry at the very other end of this list, which is a classic. And I don't think you could hear my wife, but she called down from the balcony. She was talking about this book, My Heart is a Chainsaw, and that's sort of like the horror darling of this past year. Everyone raves about this book. And the main character in that is obsessed with slashers, and she references Bava in that book. Yeah. It's really good. If you ever get a chance to listen to the audio, I highly recommend it.
Yeah, cool. I need something.
They are making a movie of it too. But you know, maybe I'm not going to check out that one. But then once we go to number 48, it's pretty much from here until the last entry where I've seen every one of these things now. And I was super excited to see number 48, which was The Conjuring. You and I have a lot of experience together talking about Conjuring films. This is the granddaddy of them all, James Wan's masterpiece, the original Conjuring. And were you satisfied with what they chose this time around?
100%. Especially because the only other thing that I might have chosen, actually, the other two things I might have chosen, they actually showed in the background. They showed the scene where the Warrens are outside and she turns around and she just has that like reaction and you don't see anything. But then in the next scene, you see the feet hanging behind the husband.
Right.
That's a great scene. That's a great scare. And then the scene that for me was the best scare in the movie was when they just look up and Bathsheba is on the friggin' wardrobe. But I had a feeling, and Charlotte and I were watching this together, and we both had a feeling that it was going to be hide and clap. And to me, that is not only is that a great series of scares that continues throughout the movie, but it also made for a fantastic trailer moment.
Oh yes.
For this, like that's like I think the most. If you had to take one scene from The Conjuring, it's the scene of Lily Taylor with the match in her hand, and then the hands come in from behind.
Right.
It's such a good scene, and I actually just rewatched The Conjuring with my Fright Club, my after-school horror club.
Oh, nice.
And everybody. Before we started it, everybody was like, yeah, we've seen it, but it's a good movie to start with. And by the second day that we were watching it, and we were watching the last hour, everybody suddenly went quiet and was like, and it's like, and I've come around to really love this movie. And it's one of those movies that you can rewatch and still kind of get scared by the same parts over and over again. And hey, look, if we weren't a channel dedicated to Mike Flanagan, we might be a channel dedicated to James Wan, because the two of them are like neck and neck for like the best horror director or the most important horror director of the last decade. And where I think, and I think we agree, Flanagan's work critically and just emotionally is of a higher quality. One 100% is he knows what audiences want, and he gets the money out of the audiences in a way that very few horror directors do. And between the Saw franchise, the Conjuring universe, the man he's done a lot for the horror genre in the last decade. Or the last really almost 20 years now, or 15 years because of Saw.
It's really, really interesting that you said that, because when you go on Twitter, right, the director of the next entry often gets hailed as one of the most important horror directors, or maybe the most important horror director for this past decade, right? And of course, talking about Jordan Peele and Get Out. But what I was going to say, I just wanted to address what you said too about James Wan. I agree with you, James Wan. Like, he really knows how to get those scares to the audience and just like get everyone involved, and just it's an event to go see his movie, right? And Flanagan's kind of different because he's made so much Netflix content and series recently. But like when Malignant came out, that was an event, right? And the whole horror community was buzzing. For James Wan, I think that he made the two scariest entries in the Conjuring franchise. I like a whole bunch of different entries in the series. But one and two are the scariest. Yeah.
I mean, and we did a full ranking on this channel of his work. We did a Conjuring universe.
We sure did.
Yeah. And I think we both had Conjurings 1 and 2 in one of Conjuring 1 and 2 are very much the aliens of modern horror, in terms of like a franchise where the first two are so obviously better than everything that comes after it.
Right.
And there's a few interesting and good things that come after it, but nothing touches those first two movies.
Exactly.
And, yeah.
So before I get to number 47, which is Get Out, I just want to do a shout out to two people that I know that watch these recaps that we do. One is Mike Bongiorno, who we've had on this channel before, and he's been on my other channel, Comic Books Transformed. He has a podcast called Pop Culture Man Children, and he's been really enjoying this show of ours. And then another one is Megan Stockton, who is a writer that is in my writers group, and I just interviewed her for our channel. I'm in the process of editing her video, so that should probably come up this week. But we got so much freaking content this week; it's ridiculous. So many things are coming out just tomorrow. It's crazy.
I like as soon as I go to bed, I just have to wake up and go back to comic.
Right, exactly.
And tomorrow, and I just reviewed Chucky season 2, episode 1. That's up on the channel now. That premiered Wednesday. Tomorrow at Comic-Con 2:30 is the Chucky panel with Don Mancini, Jennifer Tilly, Zachary Arthur, who plays Jake in the series. Cannot wait. And I'm going to do what I did with, I almost said The Haunting of Bly Manor, with Midnight Club tonight, which is just, I'm going to record the entire panel, and I'm just going to throw the entire panel and the Q&A up on our channel so that everybody gets to watch what we get to see at Comic-Con.
That is awesome, man. Yeah.
Let's talk about Get Out.
Well, so here's the thing. I'm thinking for Get Out, though, that maybe we actually don't need to go into it too much, because one thing that we've done quite a bit, we've talked about Get Out when we covered just that movie alone, and then also when we did Horror Noir, we talked about Get Out quite a bit as well. And they brought in Tanner Reeve Dew to talk about Get Out at one point, too. They brought a lot of people that were on Horror Noir to talk about it. And, of course, they picked the scene that we all thought they were going to pick, which they show in the opening credits for the show, too.
Of course. The sunken place. Right. And, I mean, the only thing I'll say, it's a very quick story that I think I've mentioned on this channel, and it just sticks with me as one of those amazing theater moments. I got one seat to see Get Out. It was packed. I got an aisle seat. I was next to an interracial couple, an African-American man and a white woman, and I was sitting next to the man. And by the end of the movie, he had moved very far away from his girlfriend to the point where he was almost on top of me in my seat.
Right.
And I'll never forget that. Just an amazing theater moment that really encapsulates this movie perfectly. And The Sunken Place it's one of the greatest, not just horror movie moments. I think it's just an amazing film moment. I mean, let's not forget, this movie won an Oscar for Best Screenplay. So this movie is beyond, like, this movie goes beyond the zeitgeist of, like, just a cool horror movie that came out. And, you know, you mentioned Jordan Peele. Jordan Peele, he's only made 3 features, so I'm hesitant to put him as the best horror director of recent times, but his work, all 3 of his films have been equally interesting and thought-provoking, and they are, you use this word, they're events, and that's what's so exciting about him as a filmmaker. So, like, you know, Get Out, Us, Nope, whatever he does next, you're going to be there opening day, and it's going to make a shitload of money.
Yeah, and you brought up a point. He's made 3 movies, and 2 of which are on this countdown of the 101 scariest horror movies of all time. So that's really interesting that he hasn't been making movies for that long, but he already has 2 out of 3 of his movies on this list. What's interesting is that number 46 is not a person who, the director of number 46 is not a person who I would label as a horror filmmaker. And yet I've said this before, that he has some of the scariest moments in film and some of the scariest moments on television. And of course, I'm talking about one of my favorites, David Lynch. And so for David Lynch, I feel like they kind of cheated. It's a little bit different. They have decided to use an episode from Twin Peaks: The Return. They kept referring to it as Twin Peaks on the show, on the Shudder show, but it's a sequel series to the original Twin Peaks. It's called Twin Peaks: The Return, and they did part 8, which is kind of like this standalone episode that shows the sort of like the origin of the evil that's in the Twin Peaks world, right? And it's an amazing, amazing episode. I actually don't want to talk about it too much because I do have this kind of hope that one day you're going to watch the Twin Peaks original show and The Return, which is like one of the best things I ever watched.
Here's my question.
Yeah.
So was Twin Peaks was a show first, or did Fire Walk with Me come out first?
No, Twin Peaks was a show on ABC, and it came out right around the time when like all those Stephen King miniseries were on ABC. Okay. And then they made a like follow-up movie, Fire Walk with Me, to kind of tie up loose ends. And then Showtime had Twin Peaks: The Return, which they kind of cheated on this show and said was like a 12-episode movie.
Yeah.
But it's like,
so I respect the heck out of David Lynch. I do plan on watching Twin Peaks. This entry was the first one, and probably is going to be the only one on this entire countdown that genuinely pissed me off. And it pisses me off not because of anything. I've never seen Twin Peaks, so It has nothing to do with Twin Peaks. It's just that you're opening up such a can of worms. The name of the show, if the name of the show was 101 Scariest Moments, I have no qualms. But you're calling it 101 Scariest Movie Moments. We talked about this on the last episode.
Right.
When you take an episode of Twin Peaks and put it on your show, well, now you've opened up the can of worms. Where are the Twilight Zones?
Right.
Where are the Tales from the Crypts?
Very good point.
Where are The Haunting of Hill House, The Haunting of Bly Manor, and all of Mike Flanagan's Netflix stuff?
I think those are coming.
I don't know, but you know something? I think as much as I love them and as much as I agree that those are some of the scariest moments, if you're calling it movie moments,
I know.
then you have to kind of be married to the word movie, or at least define it in a way. There is no way on earth anybody can consider this to be a movie. I'm sorry. It is an episode of a TV series.
Yeah.
Like, would you put an episode of Dexter on here? No, of course not.
Right.
So if that's a Showtime show, and this was a Showtime show, I when I saw this, and like Charlotte was like, "What is Twin Peaks?" I'm like, "Don't even worry about it." But this is an episode of a TV show, and it really just kind of irked me because it's opening up that can of worms that they're never going to close, because, you know, from 46 down to 1, you could put 45 more Twilight Zone episodes. And I could call Nightmare at 20,000 Feet a 25-minute movie.
Yeah.
But, you know, by this logic. So I love Shudder. This series has been awesome. I love covering it, and I'm enjoying the hell out of it. This one entry irked me very, very much, and it has nothing to do with Twin Peaks. I'm not blaming David Lynch for it. He didn't say, put this episode on the list.
Right,
you know, it irked me. But yeah, I will. It is on the list. Look, don't tell anybody. I've never watched an episode of Breaking Bad either. I've never watched an episode of The Wire. I've never watched an episode of The Shield. So there's this litany of shows that I have never watched that are like infinitely on this list that I want to get to. But at the end of the day, I feel like I'm a movie guy more than a TV guy, which is one of the reasons I love Netflix so much. Not even Netflix, but like the bingeability of shows, because I'm more geared to watching 2 to 3 hours at a time than 45 minutes at a time, and then having to wait a week. Like, I never want to go through the Lost experience ever again.
You know, you and Brian kill me, man, because like you're saying that you never watched Breaking Bad or The Wire, and then Brian is saying that like he's never watched like the Bourne movies or any James Bond, and I think Mission Impossible.
Who's James Bond? I'm kidding. I've watched all the James Bond movies.
Okay. But like, just sometimes it's like, you know, like, what have you guys not seen? But then of course there's tons of stuff you guys have seen way more than I have. But
what is funny is this is probably the first entry on the list that you've seen that I haven't.
I know. It's pretty awesome.
Actually, Mulholland Drive was also on this list.
Oh, yes.
That was also David Lynch. So you're the two blind spots that I have are both David Lynch
David Lynch.
Yeah.
So we need to eventually watch some David Lynch and then review it together on this channel.
Oh yeah,
But,
I would actually love to do that because he's one of those filmmakers I don't want to say a total blind spot on because
Right.
I've seen a few of his films. I've
Right.
seen Dear Lord, I've seen Eraserhead.
Right.
I've seen The Elephant Man,
Yeah.
and I saw Blue Velvet, which I fucking love.
Nice, man.
So those three, but
Mhm.
I think that might be it for David Lynch and me. So yeah, I would actually, that would be a fun idea because I'd love to watch more David Lynch.
Well, what we need to do is we also need to cover more films by this next director, who's another one of my very favorite directors. And there's not much content from him on our channel either, and that is Guillermo Del Toro. And so they have Pan's Labyrinth, number 45 on this list. Pan's Labyrinth, the scene that they reference is the scene with the pale man, who's played by a guy who's been in at least one Mike Flanagan production, Doug Jones, who I met at a con, and I really love the man. He was awesome. He's multiple characters in Pan's Labyrinth, and this scene is sort of like the iconic scene that people always refer to, but it is part of a kind of like a dreamlike sequence. Whereas the real horror of the movie, and they talk about it on the Shudder show, is fascism and the brutality of the humans in the movie. And so, even though there's like kind of grotesque and scary imagery with the pale man and his eyes that are in his hands, it's not the real horror of the movie. But I thought that was an excellent choice.
And this to me is absolute peak Del Toro. And if you look at his early films, this is like the perfect final completion of that of his first few films, The Devil's Backbone, Kronos, which were these like very slow real world type horror movies that, oh yeah, there's a supernatural aspect to it. There's ghosts, there's vampires, there's something. This is like that perfect final form. And the Pale Man is just one of those amazing characters. And Doug Jones, the makeup, the physical acting. I feel like him and Andy Serkis are going to eventually get Oscars for for achievement in like makeup and achievement in being in body costumes and
Exactly.
Doug Jones was the fish man in The Shape of Water, which won several Academy Awards, including Best Picture, and Del Toro won Best Director. And the movie is about him. And if he wasn't that great in that costume, in that makeup, then you don't have that great of a movie. So he's that talented. And Doug Jones goes back to he played like the monster in Hush, the episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Yes.
And he's Billy Butcherson, right? In the original Hocus Pocus. I haven't seen the second one yet. So he's and of course, yes, he's in Absentia. He's just a phenomenal actor. I was actually hoping that we would get him on this.
I know, yeah.
Which is funny because I just saw him. I think I just saw him on the Queer for Fear series on Shudder. So maybe he was busy doing that and he couldn't. Yeah, so I don't know, but he's on Shudder now.
Yeah. Well, I think. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, you said we don't have to talk a lot about Get Out. We really don't have to talk a lot about the next entry on this list. Because if you want to hear what Pete and I have to say about number 44 on this list, Rosemary's Baby, then you can search the Lassercast. We did reviews of The Unholy Trinity, The Exorcist, The Omen, and Rosemary's Baby. We did a full 45 minute to an hour deep dive of this movie. And all I'll say is I have come to appreciate this movie so much more thanks to this channel and revisiting it with you than I did when I was younger. The scene that they reference is the dream sequence where obviously it ends with Mia Farrow, Rosemary, being effectively raped by the devil and impregnated with said Rosemary's Baby.
Right.
It's a haunting scene. We have talked a lot about it, a lot about that movie. So let's jump ahead to number 43, which has another very interesting one of these Shudder. Let's put two movies that have very similar themes together, because the theme of pregnancy shows up in the movie Inside.
Inside, yes.
And the three key words that they say here: French New Extremity. You can make a lot of jokes about the French people, but in the early 2000s, they went fucking nuts in the horror genre.
Right.
And they released some of the most disturbing, graphic, disgusting, and not just that, but movies that actually had incredible plots and incredible things to say with all of this gore and grossness. And Inside is a perfect example. I'm thinking maybe.
Oh, hold on.
Go
Tell
ahead.
the description of Inside real quick. My daughter left her iPad right over there, and it's making this weird noise.
I got you.
Tell me, I'll be right back. I'll be right back. Keep going.
Inside is very simple. You have a woman who is pregnant, and she is going to be induced tomorrow. She goes home, and it's basically a home invasion movie where this mad woman comes bursting into this woman's home and tries to effectively cut the baby out of her and steal the baby for herself.
Wow.
It is one of the best home invasion films.
Mm-hmm.
It is so disturbing.
Mm-hmm.
And the scene that they reference is this awful moment where the woman has locked herself in the bathroom to escape from this woman, and she's holding like she broke the mirror, and she's holding. They always do this in horror where you just pick up a shard of glass, like you can just hold and thrust a shard of glass around, like it's not going to destroy your hand,
right?
Mike Flanagan style,
right?
And her mother shows up at the house, and her mother goes up the stairs, knocks on the door of the bathroom, and her thinking that it's this
invader.
Crazy woman.
Yeah.
She swings the door open, and I think it's like a knitting needle or something.
Yeah.
And she just swings it blindly, and she stabs her own mother in the neck, killing her. And it's this brutal scene of like it just if that appeals to you, what I've just described. French New Extremity, High Tension, Martyrs. My fucking God, Martyrs. If Martyrs will, I'm willing to bet there are 36 more entries. I'm willing to bet Martyrs is one of them, because if they put Inside on here, Martyrs is to the nth fucking degree. Another movie, Frontiers, just the French went nuts in the early 2000s, and Inside is an amazing example.
Yeah, Inside, it's interesting because like it's a movie that I actually have seen. You know, it's weird. There's so many movies that you've seen, but I have not when it comes to horror movies, especially like foreign horror movies. But this one I did see, and boy, was it difficult to watch. You know, just they even kind of show it in the review. They showed like the infant within the mom's womb at some points, like getting freaked out when she would get hit and stuff. Just intense, horrible stuff. The ending is like really rough. There's a scene that happens with a man in the movie too that's just like really upsetting.
The doctor. Oh my God.
Yeah. But consider we got like 12 minutes left. I want to kind of fly through these, and we have.
So can I make a suggestion? Why don't we talk about numbers 42, 41, and 38 all together? Because these are three movies that a lot of people will argue, well, they're not horror movies.
Right.
And I love that they included these because these are crime thrillers that touch on horror and dive deep into horror to the point where, I mean, for number 42, it's 7.
Right.
And I think the second you hear that, one word should pop in your mind, and it's sloth. And when they showed 7, I like reached over to Charlotte and I went, oh, sloth. And she went, huh?
Yeah.
And then I went, we need to watch 7.
Yeah.
So we don't have to talk anymore about that. You know that scene. It is an absolute all-timer
That is
of a
one of
jump
the
scare.
best jump scares ever. Absolutely.
For
I
number
was
71, they not only stayed with the idea of like true crime, crime thriller, but they stayed with David Fincher and they went with Zodiac,
yes.
a movie I never thought would be on this list. But the
No.
scene in question, put this in perspective. The scene that they referenced in Zodiac made Tom Savini stop watching the movie. And if you could freak out Tom Savini,
yeah.
you've done a hell of a job.
Yes.
The scene they reference there is the couple having a nice little picnic by the lake, and the Zodiac killer slowly tortures and murders them in just absolutely brutal fashion, stabbing them repeatedly after he ties them up. And then we'll jump down to number 38, which is without question to me a horror movie. One of the most iconic characters in the history of horror is Hannibal Lecter. Of course,
Sure.
I'm talking about Silence of the Lambs. Now, what did you think of the scene they picked from Silence of the Lambs?
What were you thinking, that instead they should have picked the scene where he has the man's face on his face and he pulls it off?
So for me, one of the things that's been interesting, like American Werewolf in London, they pick a scene that has nothing to do with the werewolf.
Yeah.
A Nightmare on Elm Street, they pick a non-Freddy Krueger scene. And now for Silence of the Lambs, they pick a scene that doesn't have Hannibal Lecter in it. Now,
yeah.
I agree. The ending is one of the most intense moments of the film, where
right.
she realized that amazing juxtaposition of the FBI breaking into the house and her knocking on the door, and you think the FBI is about to arrest Buffalo Bill, and then you realize, oh fuck, Clarice is at Buffalo Bill's door.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing scene, insanely tense. Jodie Foster earns her Oscar on that scene alone. That said, this is Anthony Hopkins' movie, folks. You could have given the scariest moment to the encounter they have with the fava beans and a nice Chianti.
Right.
You could have absolutely, the scene you referenced where he breaks out of the prison, he hangs the guard like an angel, and then he rips the face off in the ambulance.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting, right? Because I feel like crime and horror go together very, very well. And there are writers that are very good crime writers that are also very good horror writers. I think that like Stephen King can write an excellent crime story. And of course, he's the king of horror, right? Joe Lansdale, I think, can write horror stories, and he's very excellent at writing crime stories as well. I mean, he writes all different genres, right? But, and then even just like a guy that I'm eventually going to interview for the channel, Bo Johnson, he always kind of gets lumped in with horror writers, but he kind of writes like this real intense crime stuff, right? With his, Rider series. So, like, it's.
I mean,
it's cool
look at Netflix. Dahmer is the biggest show on Netflix right now.
Right.
I mean, and Dahmer is as much a horror movie villain, a real life horror movie villain as you could possibly have.
Right, exactly. So there's sort of that blurring of the line. And so each of these entries, I mean, Zodiac, I was kind of surprised by, but Silence of the Lambs, absolutely, it's a horror movie. And then 7, like you said, it has one of the best jump scares of all time. So I was happy to see all these entries on here. I agree with you, too, that, like, not having Hannibal Lecter in this countdown, I feel like that's weird. We haven't seen any repeats of the same movies, but
yeah, they're not gonna. I don't think.
You don't think so?
No,
yeah,
at this point,
yeah,
with only 36 movies left, only 36 entries left, I don't think they're going to start repeating movies for different moments. I think like that's what they're like with the Conjuring. They show Bathsheba jump down, and then they say this. And they also have like multiple talking heads talking about like which moment. So they're kind of skirting around the one moment per movie. But yeah, it is kind of strange. I feel like they're trying to almost trick the audience. Like if they show a scene from Halloween that doesn't feature Michael Myers, I'm like, what are we even doing, folks?
Well, it's funny that you say that because, and I think that we should group entries 39 and 38 together as well. Even though two very different filmmakers, two different scenarios, I think there's common ground, and they kind of put them next to each other
You mean
too.
40 and 39?
Oh, I'm so sorry. 40 and 39. Yes, thank you.
Okay.
40 and 39. So for 40 is 28 Days Later, which I love. I actually like the sequel even better. And then 30 Days of Night. Probably a lot of people don't feel like that should be on this list, but that's actually one of my favorite horror movies. And for 30 Days of Night, they did this thing where they kind of spoke about one scene, and then they're like, oh, but it's this scene over here. And so the scene they reference is this really kind of memorable moment where they go from an aerial bird's eye view shot of this Alaskan town, and you see these vampires just slaughtering this whole town. And that always stuck with me. But then I thought that was the scene. But then they're like, oh, no, it's this scene where Danny Houston and this other vampire are killing this couple. And that's another memorable scene, too, where there's a record player and he like puts his vampire talon on the record player. And it makes this really weird noise, and he makes this kind of vampire scream. Go ahead.
Yeah, I like the inclusion of 30 Days of Night because, and they make this point that they very rarely, especially at this time in American film, were portraying vampires as savage, monstrous animals.
Right.
Like this was Twilight era vampires, and these were some of the best vampires. I didn't love this movie, but these are some of the best vampires that I've ever seen. They're freaking scary as hell. They almost act like the aliens in Aliens, where it's just like they're pack hunters and they're just creatures.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would have gone, with some of the movies that we've talked about in previous episodes. 30 Days of Night being number 39 seems a bit too close to number 1 for my liking.
Oh,
but
yeah.
I'm fine with its inclusion. 20, I agree with you on 28 Weeks. I love 28 Weeks. But the scene in 28 Days Later they picked is such a heartbreaking moment because it's like Brendan Gleeson's character is like about to like give up. And it's like the act that he does is just like this act of like, I'm so just pissed off at the world, oh, fuck you, bird. And the drop of blood hits him in the eye. And I remember sitting there in the movie theater watching that going, as you see the blood going, oh no.
Yeah.
And it's like a heart-wrenching moment in an otherwise incredibly tense, like violent zombie movie. So
yeah, I think that they paired these two movies together because they represent that sort of that killer that you can't reason with. Danny Houston says there's like, there's no God, there's just suffering and pain or something like that, or just hunger. And then in 30 days, 28 days later, they both have days in the title too. The rage virus people, you can't talk to them at all. They're just fucking crazed animals,
they're gone.
essentially. So I think I'm happy with both those choices, and I like them being paired together. So they kind of bookended this one with another Italian horror movie. They have Suspiria by Dario Argento. That brings us up to number 37. And so I actually know a lot about this movie just based on, I think they showed it on like the Dead Meat, the kill count. I think they showed it on. And I'm kind of familiar with it, but I'm assuming you're a big fan.
You never saw this from
I've not seen this or the remake.
Okay. Suspiria is just a perfect 85, 90-minute horror movie. It's less about the plot than it is about, and they mention this, it's the most beautifully colorful movie. It's gore and it's gross out blood and gore, but it's in such a beautiful way. It is lit so amazingly that you can't even believe what you're watching. It's almost hypnotic. It's like a painting, like a disgusting painting come to life. And it's really one of my favorite. Basically, everything Argento did from 1975 until about 1988, I fucking love. It's one of the great stretches. It's like Carpenter from 76 to 94, where it's just like every couple of years, every year in the 80s, he's putting out another just banger. and Argento was doing the same thing in Italy. It's just this amazing stream of movies, and this was part one of kind of like the unspoken Mother of Tears trilogy, with this Inferno, which is actually my personal favorite Argento movie, and Mother of Tears, which wasn't as good, is not really heralded as that good, but Deep Red, Suspiria, and Inferno is just an amazing 3 movies to come out in like a 5-year stretch. And then he followed that up with Tenebrae and oh god, what's it? Phenomena and Opera, and just a string of like pretty great movies in the early to mid 80s too. Suspiria is a must watch. It's one of the best modern like horror movies about witches. And the remake is really good. It's just that it's 2.5 hours, and it doesn't have to be 2.5 hours. There's like this bizarre subplot that's about 30 minutes long that can literally just be taken out, and boom, you have a nice 2-hour horror movie. But yeah, I like that they bookended this chapter with Bava, and they ended it with Argento, and I think we have 3 episodes left. We're in the final 36 now.
Yeah.
And Charlotte, I really loved watching this episode with Charlotte, because there were a bunch of movies here that I've been like talking to her about. Suspiria being one of them, Seven being one of them, Pan's Labyrinth. I've been begging her to watch Pan's Labyrinth for like years, I feel like.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited to get to those with her. And like, you know, you're already starting to, like, in your head, you're already starting to play with, okay, we know a lot of the movies that are going to be in the next 36, but where are they going to rank? Where are they going to be?
Right.
Shudder put out, you know, they've been doing this thing where, you know, show us a scene, show us a day so I put the, you know, obviously for me, Hereditary, I found the scene of Peter waking up, and just very subtly in the background, Toni Collette up on the wall, and that one scene, my fucking god, I that has to be the scene from Hereditary.
Yeah.
Although, I mean, Charlie getting her head knocked off by the pole.
Right.
I mean, my fucking god.
Right.
So
the way the show goes, it could go either way between those two, I feel.
Yeah. So now in my head, I'm playing with, is Hereditary going to be number 36, or are they going to go crazy, and is Hereditary going to be a top 10? You know, like for me, I would put it in the top 10.
I know. Yeah. I mean, it's like
we haven't seen Halloween, The Shining, Carrie. There's The Thing. There's so many like classics left. Psycho, obviously, The Exorcist, The Omen.
See, and like literally, that to me makes sense for the final episode, the top 12. I feel like all those are going to be in there, but they kind of throw your expectations, you know, for a loop, and so they might not be in the top 12.
So
you know?
Okay, we I know you have to get going, so let's end this. Gun to your head. If I'm asking you now, with about 3 episodes to go, what do you think that Shudder is going to? Not your number one. What do you think Shudder is going to put as their number one?
Oh, Christ. I keep thinking Exorcist, but I might be wrong. I know that they've sort of alluded to Exorcist a lot on, like, you know, Cursed Films and other things that they've had on the chat on Shudder. So what about you? Halloween?
No, I think they're going to go, well, Bravo had their number one was the opening scene of Jaws.
Oh.
You can't go wrong with me with Jaws.
Right, that'll be on there.
It's going to be on there.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to go with, I think they're going to go Chestburster.
Really? Because the alien is the last thing you see in the opening credits, where the alien goes,
I think they're going to, although I think it would be really interesting, given that this show has leaned into a lot more modern horror. I mean, here, just this episode, The Conjuring, Get Out, Pan's Labyrinth,
30 Days of Night.
28 Days Later, and 30 Days of Night are
Yeah.
all movies that have come out in the and Inside and
Yeah.
Zodiac. All of these movies have come out in the 2000s.
Yeah.
Who knows? If they put Hereditary at number one, I wouldn't be upset. I know.
I agree. I think it's definitely top 12 material. That's for sure. And you might even get Midsummer on there too.
I could see that. I didn't love Midsummer as much, but I could see that. I mean, look, I might be. I think you'd agree with me. I'd be a little upset if Midsummer was in the last 36 after they put The Wicker Man way high on the list.
Of course, and all of this is like they already did Freddy Krueger, so it's like how is he like 2 episodes ago? And I know. So we'll see. But for our people that are watching, because I already mentioned some people that I know watch this, but for everyone else, what do you guys think the number one choice is going to be for Shudder? Let us know in the comments below. And if you guys haven't subscribed, please do. You're going to get like 15 videos today from Danny from Comic-Con.
Yeah.
But I need to peace out. But Danny will be here all day today giving you updates from Comic-Con.
Midnight Club, Chucky, you name it. I'm going tomorrow. I'll be there at 10 a.m.
Well, it's today because this video is going up that day.
I'll be there today.
But anyway, we will be back, though, next week to talk about 101 scariest horror movie moments of all time. And I guess TV shows, too. All right. Yep. We'll see you all later.